Thank you so much. Good afternoon and welcome to today's statewide webinar hosted by SPEDTex and Partners Resource Network. My name is Sarah Untersea and I am part of the SPEDTex team. The topic for today's webinar is transition planning resources for families. A few housekeeping items before we get started today. If you need technical assistance during today's webinar, we do have Brian Wilson with us today from Region 10 to provide that support. He is the black and white box that you might see on your Zoom screen, and you can send him a chat message if you need any help. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on the SPEDTex website. It usually takes about a week in order for that to be posted, but we will drop our website link in the chat so that you are able to access that once it becomes available. Today's presentation slides are in both English and Spanish, and the same presentation will be used during both versions of the webinar. Although time does not allow for live questions and answers today, you are welcome to put any questions that you have in the Q&A box, and we will pass those along to our presenters following the webinar. SPEDTex is the Special Education Information Center for Texas. We are a collaborative project between Region 10 Education Service Center and the Texas Education Agency. We help parents to understand their rights and responsibilities under IDEA and facilitate collaboration when there are concerns between the parent and the school district. We also serve as a resource for educators. We offer support via phone, email, or live chat for families and professionals. We have webinars and resources. Our contact information is on the screen. I'm now going to turn it over to Stephanie McLaughlin to share some additional information about Partners Resource Network.
Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Stephanie McLaughlin. I am the Training and Evaluation Specialist for Partners Resource Network. Partners Resource Network is the nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of parent training and information centers. We are funded through the Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs, and throughout Texas we have 4 projects: PACT, PATH, PIN, and TEAM. Our mission at Partners Resource Network is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. We do this through a network of highly skilled, regionally located coordinators who are knowledgeable in local policies, services, and resources, as well as our state and national guidelines. We provide training, information, and one-on-one assistance at no cost to Texas families and youth. We serve parents of children and youth with disabilities from birth to age 26 and youth self-advocates from ages 14 to 26. Our services are provided in both English and Spanish. For more information, you can check out our website at prntexas.org, and you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at prntexas. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Stephanie. We are excited to welcome our presenter, Elizabeth Danner. Elizabeth is the State Transition Coordinator with the Texas Education Agency, or TEA. She coordinates statewide technical assistance to promote effective transition planning from early to exit. Planning for adult life starts in early childhood and continues through the exit from public schools. For students receiving special education services, this planning includes required elements to be considered by the Admission, Review, and Dismissal, or ARD committee, by age 14. Elizabeth has worked in public education for over 20 years in roles that include paraprofessional, teacher, professional development specialist, and consultant. Her professional focus continues to be on connecting people with disabilities to careers, continued learning, and community beyond high school. At this point, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Elizabeth.
Thanks so much, and big thanks to SPEDTex for letting me join today to talk about, of course, one of my favorite subjects, transition planning. And also thanks to the participants here today for joining me for the next few minutes to talk about transition planning. And so with this, I'm going to share my screen. And so I'm guessing that you are joining today because you've already thought about your child growing up and becoming an adult. And maybe you've done a lot to prepare for their launch from public school into adult life, or maybe you're just getting started. So whether your child is very young or almost ready to graduate, this webinar will give you a few resources to explore as you move toward their transition to adulthood. So we're going to start with a very familiar website, SPEDTex. And for today's webinar, I'm just going to kind of drive along and let you see where I go to find the resources that we're going to be reviewing today. So starting with SPEDTex, you see that at the top navigation bar, there's resources, and you can scroll down to SPEDTex Resource Locator. So when I do that, it gives me the option to search by topic, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to search for transition topics. And one resource is a new resource posted just yesterday, I believe. And I want to highlight this for you. We're going to scroll down the list. Notice it's in alphabetical order. So I'm going to click on the Overview of Transition Planning for Parents and make that image a bit bigger for the benefit of all of our eyes. So this resource helps parents understand the big picture for transition planning. This might be especially helpful for parents who are just starting down this road, families who are just kind of opening the door to transition planning. It's more of a bite-sized chunk. It also might be a helpful resource to kind of go back to when you get lost in the all of the information that you might receive as you're doing transition planning. This can be a helpful resource to kind of go back and get centered and remember the big picture of transition. And so the first thing you'll notice about this resource is that it's a condensed version of the Texas Transition and Employment Guide, which is posted on the Texas Sped Support website, which we will navigate to in a moment. So this resource, you can see that it gives you a little bit about the resource and some links. And these map icons and the images and information in this will be very familiar to you when we get to the Texas Transition and Employment Guide, because it pulls directly from the guide, and it really just highlights some of the most critical information in the guide, the what I call the guide, the Texas Transition and Employment Guide. So here's a nice infographic with terminology you might hear for when you're talking about transition planning in an ARD committee meeting. And then some good questions to ask your ARD committee about transition planning and how to have how students might be more involved in their transition plan. So again, you can see that's just a kind of a snapshot of highlights from the guide. So now that we know how to find this overview from the SPEDTex website, now we're going to navigate over to the Texas Sped Support website to see the full guide and to see a few other resources. So the first thing to know about Texas Sped Support is it's designed for educators, but there are resources on Texas Sped Support that may be helpful to parents as you plan for your child's transition to adulthood. So you can join me at the Texas Sped Support website by clicking the link in the chat or typing spedsupport.tea.texas.gov into an open tab on your internet browser. And so you see that the direct link has been added to the chat. So much like SPEDTex, Sped Support, you can search by topic. So at the top navigation bar, right next to the logo, you see topics. And so I'm going to select transition as the topic. And look at that. The first resource is the Texas Transition and Employment Guide. So as we saw from the overview document for parents that we just reviewed, the Transition Guide is an essential resource for anyone exploring transition planning anywhere along the path. And you can get to the guide directly from the overview document that we just saw, but I wanted to show you how to get there from the Texas Sped Support homepage. So let's click the link to open up that card. And so now we're on the page for the Texas Transition and Employment Guide. And the first thing you see here is an overview video that can help you become familiar with the guide. And the video is designed to help educators use the guide in their work, but you might want to use this video if you'd like to learn more about the purpose of the guide or the history of how the guide came to be. And it also might help you consider how to use each section to support transition planning with your child. So with that, you can see that it's available in several languages. I'm going to click open the English document. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and make that a bit bigger. So here we are in the guide itself. Again, you see those familiar images, familiar icons with those map icons from that overview document. And when we look at the table of contents, we see that it's color-coded and uses icons to help anyone navigate the guide easily. And notice the chapters for the life domains: careers, college, and community. And then there are also chapters to learn more about transition planning and the transfer of rights at age 18. And then we also have some chapters for financial planning and for healthcare transition. And finally, the last two chapters include lists of activities to complete, skills to teach, and agencies that can support a successful transition. So now that you know a bit more about what is in the guide, let's go back and find a couple more resources. So here, I'm going to go back to the Texas Sped Support homepage, and this time I'm going to click, instead of topics, I'm going to click resources at the top navigation bar. You can see that pulls up the resource library. There's 346 resources currently, more added every day. Well, maybe not every day, but more added frequently. So this is one way to navigate the Texas Sped Support website, is clicking on the resources to get to the resource library. And on the left side navigation, you can see options to filter results from your search. So I'm going to click on topics on the left side navigation, and we see the same list of topics, but this time it's in the resource library itself. So I just checked transition as the topic. And for my audience, since this is a SPEDTex webinar, I'm going to select parents and families as the audience. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to select type, and I'm going to select video. So now we see 29 results, 29 videos that are related to transition with that include parents and families as a potential audience for these videos. So we can see that there are some animated videos about the guide that might be fun to watch with your child or your young adult to get more of a sense of how students might use the guide. And you also see many interviews with parents and others who share their expertise to support successful transition planning. So we're going to take a moment now to hear from Laura Buckner. I'm going to scroll down this list, and we're going to hear from Laura Buckner to hear about setting your child up for success. And so I'm going to open up that video. We'll hear 2 minutes and 8 seconds of Laura Buckner talking about transition.
So let's talk about transition. And you know, a lot of times transition, people think I'm talking about when you're about to graduate high school, but transition is anytime you're moving from one thing to another. So how does your child move from class to class? How does your child move from grade to grade? How do they move from building to building? You know, If our child's receiving special ed services, there's a ton of information in their IEP and in their folder that's useful. I'm not saying it's not good information, but often it's what I call deficit based. It's about what the child can't do, will never do, isn't good at, and none of us moves into a new position or a new place with new people by proclaiming all of our deficits. We like to lead with, here's who I am, here's what I'm good at, here's what I love, here's what I love to do. Here's what other people like about me or admire about me that will help me be a valuable person in your classroom or in your building. We have to begin to recognize those things and help our own children recognize those things in themselves and learn to introduce them that way, rather than, here's my child, he has this label, he's functioning at this grade level, he's not able to do that. And unfortunately, that's how we lead often when we're introducing our son or daughter to a new grade, a new teacher, a new building, even a new out of high school into a career. We have to learn how to lead with what they're good at, what they love to do, what they want to do as adults, and how we can begin to prepare them for that, what other people like or admire about them, because that's how the rest of us want to be introduced. Why would we want it to be any different for our kids?
Right. So that's from the Straight Talk series. There's several more videos from that series, as you can see from just scrolling the collection of resources. You can see Laura's face on there a lot, and then you can also see other topics and other presenters talking about a lot of really critical information for transition planning. So now that we're back in the resource library, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reset all filters. There's several ways to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and reset all of the filters and go back to our full 346 resources. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select transition as our topic. We haven't left that. And parents and families. And then for type of resource, this time I'm just going to select document. And so here we can see 5 results. The first result that we see, the most recently added, is indeed the same document that we started the webinar with, the overview of transition planning for parents. And so you can see it's housed both on, you can get to it from directly from SPEDTex on their resources list, or you can access Texas Sped Support and find it that way. So we have that same resource, and of course the Texas Transition and Employment Guide that we have already reviewed, but we're going to quickly review a couple of the other resources that we find in our search here. So we're going to look into the Roadmap to Texas Transition Resources and the Next Steps to Independence checklist. So let's click on that roadmap. So when I click on the roadmap from the resource library, I see that it takes me to the page where I can open the document, and it's available in English and Spanish. Just like we saw with the Texas Transition and Employment Guide, we see that when it's a link to a document, you'll see what languages it's available in. You can just click to open those PDFs. And the page description right below the resource, you can see that the page description tells us a bit about what we'll find in the document and how we might consider using it. So at this point, I'm going to click open that English resource and make that a bit bigger. So the first page of the Roadmap to Texas Transition Resources gives us similar information about how we might consider using this. So it's just a little more information there. And then scrolling down to the second page, we can see a list of local resources. So this is organized in a table on the left column. On the far left column, we see the agency name. So we see things like Centers for Independent Living or CILS, the Transition and Employment Designee or TED. And let me just pause right there to say, if if your child is in a Texas public school and you are interested in learning more about transition planning, or you have some questions about transition planning, get to know your TED. And you can find ways to connect with your TED in the Texas Transition and Employment Guide. So just a quick plug for the TED, the Transition and Employment Designee. So on that left side of this page, we see the agency or the individual name, and then we see which areas the agency or individual can offer supports or information. And so we see those topics: advocacy, financial, legal, education, employment, and community. And then on the far right column, we see that if you download the PDF, it's a fillable form, so you can type information, or you could print out a copy of this and you could take this to transition fairs or to meetings with the school, to your meeting with the TED, to anywhere that you're going to be talking about your child's transition to adult life. This could be a resource to help you capture that information and keep track of the contacts that you're developing. And then scrolling down, notice there's some blank spaces. There are going to be other local resources that may not be in every community, but if they're in your community, you might want to keep track of those. And then we scroll down to see there's also statewide resources. And so this, similar to the local resources, we have the list of agencies on the far left, what areas they support or can provide information. And then here you see some of the contact information already filled in that you could adapt. If you find better contact information for maybe a local contact, you could adapt that. And then when we scroll down further, on page 7, we see a list of the Texas Medicaid waiver programs with links to learn more about each on the Navigate Life Texas website. So lots of that. And then at the very end of the document, you see descriptions of each of the resources that are listed in the document. So lots of ways you might consider using that document in supporting your child's transition to adulthood. So now we're going to go back to the resource library. And now we're going to check on the next steps resource. So this is the next steps to independence, skills, and strategies. And hopefully by now you have noticed how the navigation of Texas Sped Support, where however you get to the resource, once you land on the resource on that page where the resource is posted, you have ways to access the resource for download or for sharing. And then you also have a little bit of information about the resource. So this document is organized by age and grade ranges, starting with birth to age 3 and ending with 18 plus, which is ages 18 to 22. And it highlights critical developmental milestones for self-determination. So we're going to explore this document. We're just going to briefly touch on this document to get a sense of how we might use it and what's included in this. And for our purposes today, we're going to start with the middle school list. So as I scroll down, you're going to see that we've moved from birth to age 3 to 5, now through elementary school. And then I'm just going to show you the organization of this, just using the middle school. We're going to start right in the middle. So on the first page for middle school, we can see lists of skills organized by each area. We've got choice making and decision making, goal setting and independence, self-management and self-awareness, and self-determination and self-advocacy. So if we just look at goal setting, the skills we might expect a middle schooler to have include giving input on their individualized education program or IEP and accommodations or modifications, giving input on their post-secondary goals, choosing weather-appropriate clothes and dressing independently, and participating in their admission review and dismissal or ARD committee meeting. Then we scroll to the second page for middle school. We can see strategies to teach each of these skills at school or at home. So for goal setting, we might support our child to use checklists. We might encourage them to participate in the development of their IEP or to attend their ARD committee meeting. And we might help them track their progress on goals or teach them what to do in emergencies. And on the left side of this page is a list of important action steps for families, such as collaborating with your child's teacher or putting your child's name on the interest list for Medicaid waiver programs. And those are the same programs that we saw on the roadmap to Texas Transition Resources. So that is our quick tour of transition resources that may be helpful to parents and families in your exploring transition planning for your child or your young adult. So I hope you found this helpful. And if you have any questions about the resources or about transition planning, you can reach out to SPEDTex at the contact information on that website, or you can find contacts for the Education Service Center or ESC in your region by going to Texas Sped Support site and clicking contacts at the top navigation bar. And here, if you are not sure what region you are in, there's a map that opens up and you can see the map of Texas with the number of each region. So that's one way that you can navigate that. And the other thing that you can do is, again, we can search the list of statewide contacts by topic. And this was not working earlier today. So it's working again. There was just a hiccup earlier. I was prepared to tap dance, but look at that. Texas Sped Support has righted itself just within minutes. So you can look, you can search by topic, and you can also, let's see if this will work. If we look at region 15 for transition, and so here we can see that we have found, if we were in region 15, we can see who we might contact to ask about transition. So that's all I have for you today. Again, thanks to SPEDTex for letting me join. And I'm just wishing everyone the best of luck in your child's transition.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. We are now going to go back to Stephanie McLaughlin to share some additional information about Partners Resource Network.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the information, Elizabeth. As a reminder, we are the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Texas, and all of our services are free. Check out our website for events in your local area, and also coming soon will be all of the information about our webinars coming up after the first of the year. So be sure and check that out. Like and follow us on Facebook for a lot of information and resources shared there. Thank you.
If you have questions about special education, contact us at SPEDTex, your source for special education information. We are happy to help. Our contact information is on the screen.